Hey, everybody. It's beautiful Friday. Deep Walkers with Jefferson Keith Langley. We are blessed to have a good guy on the recording today. It's Scott Savory from New York City, New York. I'm going to open the floor so he can kind of introduce himself. Scott's a cool guy, amazing soul, doing some amazing things, and I'll let him flow and let you know.
Hey, everyone. Jefferson, good morning. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, brother.
I think the quickest introduction to give on myself would just be young, humble guy, or trying to be as grounded as possible here in New York. 30 years old, doing real estate as a career, but sort of dipping my hands and toes into many other facets of life in this journey. And born and raised in South America, in Guyana, and moved to New York when I was 18 years old. And yeah, here we are.
Beautiful, brother. Right on. So today, everyone, we are going to talk about, kind of a little bit of a mixed topic of creating from the inside out. What does that mean for each individual person? And how does it incorporate as the slang of special sauce? Like, what is everybody's special sauce? Kentucky Fried Chicken has theirs. The McDonald's has their special sauce. Everybody wants to know what their sauce is. And, Nike's got their special sauce. Martin Luther King had his special sauce, and I just look at it. I'm so fascinated by the concept of, what could be called like your blueprint or blueprinting, and we started talking before the recording, Scott and I stopped him and I went, wait, let's do this on the air. So let's pick up where we left off, Scott, and we were talking about kind of like the approach of the show and how people are. I mentioned to you, people have said to me, like, oh, you don't say that much, and I'm very precocious, kind of like a Sherlock Holmes of life. I check it out, I look at it, I decipher it, reverse engineer it, how would it have gotten here, and blah, blah, blah. And people have messaged me, and I mentioned it to you that I don't say that much on the show, but I'm very much a group adventurer, and we talked about like the group collective, the collective upliftment or, collective ideology about it all. And you were talking about Joe Rogan, how he had Kanye West on the show. And so please elaborate again what we were talking about.
Yeah, I think going back into that was just more so how many of these conversations go and admiring the skill set of Joe Rogan and Kanye West, where he allows this individual to go on these like crazy rants, but yet instead of like saying, hey, you're wrong or right, or I need this conversation to go in this direction or that direction, it seems to be out of a place of like genuine curiosity and like having this person like go through this like chain of thoughts and like try to get to like their end goal. But it's like through this 3 hours of like him being genuinely curious as to what this person says and letting this person say what he's saying. In 3 hours, you're like, whoa, I get such an insight into like this individual's mind, and then it's up to you, the listener, to be like, well, I'll pick this from this or that from that. But it was just like, as someone who's now running this amazing podcast and coming up with this blueprint for people, if you go into it with a mindset of like, I'm going to channel answers out of people, then you might not ever get the genuine content you need.
Yeah, correct. And, people have interesting perspectives, and it's not one ideology, it's many, merged into one. It's kind of like like I said, a collective, and in that collective there's power because it takes a little bit of everybody, and it takes a little bit of everything, and we're all going in the same direction in that force. And so I picked this topic with you. I have all these different things where I want to explore and find out what does Scott think about that, and I picked this specifically for you because, you do have a very unique style to you, in regards to our interaction, not only professionally, but, you were on my Above podcast, and we, exchanged some emails afterwards, and we're always talking about, how we're bettering ourselves every day, and you're expanding into this entrepreneurial space, and as you said, you're getting your fingers and hands in many different aspects of life and getting involved in moving. So what do you think about this concept that everyone has kind of their own special sauce that's inside, kind of like your own ingredients that make up who you are, and maybe some of those are not as beneficial to you and the outside world around it. Maybe you shift those, but the ones, and then you merge those with the ingredients that are working, and you kind of have this unique concoction, and how you can creating things in your life from kind of projecting that, this is my jam, because it comes up a lot. People hit doubt and risk, and, they get scared about taking leaps of faith, and they want to go do something, and they don't know how. What's your perspective about it? And, do you think about that kind of stuff?
I feel like 100 thoughts just went through my head, and I think about it all the time. You just broke the dome. I don't know where to start, but I guess the simplest statement I can make to start this conversation on that question, which is such a good question, and it's difficult because it's a life question, right? And what I think about is this beautiful quote by Wayne Dyer, which is, each individual is a seedling with treeness inside of them. And when I talk to friends sometime, I say, look, I truly believe that we're all, like, I love analogies, and it's like, look, we're all a tree, and life is filled with all these experiences and knowledge, and think of it as sunshine and water. And with the more of it that you get, the taller you grow. And your one job here is to just grow as beautiful and tall and flourish as much as possible as this tree, right? But I feel like this society that we live in, so many people are not really focused on internal growth, right, of like the higher self. And that higher self, for some, it might be like, look, I want to get ahead in work and life and money or material things or whatever, versus being like, if I am whole within and I'm helping, then all these things that are important will come. So then it's like, how does one become better, right? And for me, I feel like I went through, at 19 years old when I moved here, I had this opportunity, and this can be perceived by some, this next statement, as because I know they did that Netflix thing on this. I went to Tony Robbins' seminar. I got my real estate license before I could drink, and this guy came and pitched the office, and I went to this thing. And I remember being here in the U.S., and everything was new to me. Like everything was just so mind-blowing. It's like total trying to go through this adaptation. But I went to this thing, and it's like in the first night you walk on these coals, you do all these things. But the most important thing was like, you are in control of your emotions, right? And it's that simple thing, which is like, if you're in control of your emotions, you're in control of your situation, which means that you're taking ownership of your life. And for me, from going through that, every day is always like, well, how do I improve? A little bit at a time. And it's not a matter of like improving like fitness or performance, but just improve as like, am I a better person today? Am I learning a little more? Am I reading a little more? Am I being present? Am I doing things better? Am I being lazy? It's just going through these different phases every day of like slow, steady, consistent growth. And even if you go backwards, it's like, take ownership, try to move forward. And I can tell you a little more about like the journey from Guyana to here and everything, or the experiences that help in this growth journey. But I feel like that was like, I think, the true catalyst.
That's crazy. So I ask friends and, a lot of clients, this comes up, and I'm going to ask you, but in a more direct way sometimes, because it's tailored to that individual. Every situation is different. But in the broad statement of the question, I'm going to ask it to you. Do you get more appreciation from drinking wine if you know how it's made, what's in it, and what it took to make that?
Yeah.
Or is it still just wine? Or do you go
I think the perception of knowing that.
No, go ahead.
I think it's the perception of knowing that something took more time just makes you take the time to appreciate it, right? So the interesting question that I just thought about there is, What if I put 2 glasses of wine in front of you and I didn't tell you which one someone spent 10 years to make?
Correct.
Would you appreciate it if I didn't tell you that?
Absolutely. And that is part of where I want to take it, is because, like, if you aren't given that option and you're just given one option by the mass collective, then of course you won't know to ask for the one that's opposite or different or extraordinary. If the coexisting of any two properties is impossible, because the space will not allow them to coexist. One must be dominant and one must be more submissive, right, in regards to energy and positional posture. So the fact that you've never been told that there's an extraordinary path that is an equal option to a common path, and when you walk down those paths, they cannot coexist. You can't be extra common or common extraordinary. You know, I mean, how does that coexist? You can't. And what they don't tell you in the collective, you know, ideology right now is that the 2 glasses on the table are extraordinary or common based on your definition of that. And you get from that decision what's on that path. If you say, this is extraordinary, and absolutely, I am doing it that way, this way, because it's my way, because of my ingredients, because of my special sauce, don't you think automatically by default you're choosing the other one?
Good thought, and probably most likely.
So in the concept of, like, what we're talking about of creating from the inside out, and asking how you do that so that people can see in action someone doing it, what are the ingredients that you look at Scott and go, that is my jam, and I'm going to keep playing that jam, and I'm going to keep doing that jam because it's working. I dig you. You're freaking fantastic on a professional level, on a career level, on a personal level. You know, you're amazing.
Thanks, Jefferson.
You're killing it. So I want people to go like, hey, wait a minute. Why would I want to be normal? Why would I want to fit in? Why would I want to be common and match the mass collective that's already misled me anyway?
People will always just seek comfort, right? I think at the end of the day,
how do you get over
the mind and natural human state wants to just seek comfort, right? No one wants things that are difficult. And this is something I could speak to maybe from, like, racing bikes for 20 plus years, you know, on an international level for the national team, which is, you know, through sports, and maybe this conversation is also something that's, like, for a lot of people, you can't put your hands on it because it's not a physical thing that you can touch. It's an idea, but the idea is actually a simple idea. And sometimes I tell friends this, which is like in cycling, it's this extremely difficult endurance sport. And when I was a kid, I'd show up to these races and I'd lose and I'd cry, right? And over time, it was just one of those things where it was like, look, you can cry as much as you want for losing, but there's only one thing you could do, which is go get better. And you look at society and you look at, like, people who are envious of other people, and, you know, you joke and it's like, oh, you guys, you're doing really well at work. And it's like, yeah, you know, they talk about the 20-year overnight or 10-year overnight success, right? And it's the same in sports. You look at these Olympic athletes and you're like, you guys have been doing this your entire life. And then someone sits around and, you know, they're like, I want the same thing that you have, but no one wants to put in the work. No one wants to make the sacrifice. No one has the discipline. And it's funny because as an athlete, I actually think it's that simple. It's like if you want something, there requires a great amount of sacrifice to get it. But most people one, identify what they want, and then 2, go through the motions of, like, at least trying to get on that path of, like, discipline and sacrifice.
When you say sacrifice, just define that for me so that...
So let's say I wanted to lose 10 pounds, right? And I had a habit, so a lot of this is habit also, right? So I had a habit of eating burgers 3 times a week and drinking 10 beers. No one is telling you that you need to cut out the burgers and the 10 beers. but you also have another goal that you're asking yourself, which is to lose 10 pounds. So now you got to make adjustments. Those adjustments now are the sacrifice. So you can't want the cake and eat it, right? You can't want to be the best in your field, but then slack off 6 hours a day. But then I feel like the struggle that I have is the balance struggle, which is you don't want, for a lot of people, it's like, okay, you want to do really well at work and you want to make money, but then all of a sudden you give up all the things that make life, right? Which are the quality time to friends and family, outdoor time. You know, it's like there has to be a balance, and you have to set realistic goals as to like what you want.
Right.
So this is the dilemma, right, for many, which is you want all these things, but there's only a few that you can actually have. And it's like, do you want the things that you want, or is society telling you the things that you want? So it's like you got to figure that out first, and then you got to say, here's the blueprint, here's the road, here's the roadmap as to like how I achieve this thing that I want. And on this journey, it's like, you know, they say like Nike's old saying, just do it, right? It's like if you start, then you'll figure out, maybe actually I didn't want to do that, but like because I'm on this journey, I feel like I want to go down this other path. But without starting, you're just going to sit there looking at it, wishing and wanting.
Right. How would you explain, in your perspective, say two people going after the same thing, and they both have different approaches and they both work?
Well, question for you on that, and this is the Buddhist mindset in me now, right? The singular thing that they're going after, can only one have it? So is it a win or lose situation, or is this, can we both have it? So is that a championship belt, or is this success in a specific field? Does what I need take away from what you have, or can we both have it?
Right. And it's,
you know, because I feel like
I think it's more in any scenario, whether you win or lose, whether both can have it, both can't, whether one has to be in a different space than the other one. I'm focusing on the question about the technique of who they are, and how who they are and what they're aware of themselves about their jam, how well they can play that jam, so to speak. Yeah. Like, you understand?
That's a great way to ask the question, because it's like, if we're going to play this jam, right, you have to first figure out what are your strong points to figure out your technique. So are you the guitar player or are you the drummer? Right?
Right.
And then you got to say, well, look, here are my strong suits, but here are all my weaknesses, and here's what I can improve. So the whole thing about, like, finding your higher self is also being like, I truly believe we all know the bad things we do on a daily basis, right? Like, at the end of the day, you can wrap up the day and be like, I shouldn't have binge-watched 3 hours of Netflix, you know?
Right.
And we know this, but you'll still do it. So first you got to identify, I think, look, what am I good at? What is my personality or strong suit? Like, what is this God-given gift that I have? And for some people, you might not figure it out, but you can also figure out, like, what am I bad at? What should I stop doing? Right?
Right.
And then that might lead you into, like, okay, here's my strong suits.
Yeah. And do you think, if you look at that picture and you go, wouldn't it be safe to conclude from that statement that you said that the better you are at you, the better things are going to be?
1,000%.
Not bad at you. Yeah, right. 1,000%.
Because it's like, as long as you're trying to improve you, right, the internal self, everything on the external is going to be fine, right? But if you wake up every day and you go, how do you improve you?
Well, you personally share things that you do so that people can understand how actually easy it is to start implementing things as deep as possible. You know, I'm not talking about, like, be positive and have a positive attitude. You know, forget all that. I'm talking,
Yeah, so not the hoorah, not the rah-rah, the mental. Like, how do you actually find improvement?
Right.
I would say for me, the things that I can personally speak about are, I think what I just mentioned, which is, I've not been on this mud ball for that long compared to many. So in 30 years, I think I've gone through so many different variations of myself and experiences in life that I'm just very aware of, like, the improvements I need to make to be better. So it's like, look, and it's like, you don't know what you need to be doing until you know, right? It's like, you won't get to stage 5 or understand stage 5 until you go through 3 and 4. So I just think it's one of those things where it's like, the more I interact with people, and this part of actually being, I think, one of the blessings about being a broker is, like, I was able, and just through this conversation, right, Jefferson, it's like, in my job, I'm exposed to so many amazing individuals from so many different, career paths and countries and everything. And it's sort of like, the average person is going to wake up, talk to the same 5 friends, go to the same job, interact with the same 10 people, and go back about their routine. But as I move around New York and as I meet all these, the millionaires or the average person who's buying their first-time home, I'm genuinely interested in, like, that person. So it's like going through those experiences, I'm like, okay, through observation, maybe this person has, like, this great character trait, and I'm like, well, why am I not that positive, or why am I not that humble, or, this person's just so kind to be around, they're so generous, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, if I reflect inwards, here's something that I can improve. So that gives me the sense of, like, okay, cool, that's one way. Through reading, through racing, all these little things, I think it's just like, you want a better, I show up to a race and someone's like really, really good. And I'm like, okay, let me reach out to this guy and see, like, who his coach is. What is he doing different for eating and training? And then it's like you set your goals and you're like, well, what do I want? And then it's like, to get this thing that you want, I have to figure out the sacrifices I need to make or whatever. I don't think there's, like, a singular thing that I can say I have. I just think it's like this ebb and flow of discipline and focus. Some days, like, sometimes you have it, like, I'll give you a perfect example, like, quarantine completely broke a lot of, like, really good habits that I had, but now it's like, hey, you need to restructure and reshift all of these, because you're saying you want these things in work and cycling and life, and you want to be entrepreneurial, but there are certain sacrifices that you need to make, and you just got to go start them and put these things in motion, and then hopefully you can get them. Yeah. But it's the mindset, I think, is what it comes down to at the end of the day, now that I'm saying this out loud, right? It's like, it's wanting more of yourself and more of this life. So I just talked to a friend about this yesterday, and maybe this will help. I see life as this big book, and each of us just going to end it with more chapters than the next. And it's not a winning or losing thing. I just see the chapters as experiences, right? Yeah. So it's like, do you wake up and do you want to add a couple more chapters every day, or are you just happy with where you are, stuck on that page? Yeah. Leave the book on the desk and walk away. Yeah. I think I'll get to this later. Yeah, absolutely. So, when we talk about, the 2 paths and the, choosing all the time to do your thing and, not try to mimic someone else's process or someone else's path or someone else's journey, and you're, you're going through your life. Don't you think that, or what would you think about the concept of, in knowing those ingredients that you've polished and you know how it got there, and you know what you did, and you know how you made that better, you know how you cut a minute off your mile, you know how you cut off 10 seconds off of a corner because you've been practicing on corners, taking corners quicker and closer and all that stuff, right? Speaking in cycling, right? Yep. When you start to get that in sync and knowing those ingredients and going, like, I'm going to give it a little bit of this and a little bit of that and some je ne sais quoi and I'm going to give it some Jefferson, Don't you think that in doing that and the risk that people think that they're facing, and
potentially the fear or anything that might come up about doing that you can look and go, it's so Michael Jackson. Could you imagine Michael Jackson taming that down? I used this example before. Go ahead.
Go for it, Jefferson. Actually, just like as you were saying this, I was just thinking about, like, I guess in certain things you do need to follow the formula, right? But the thing that will make you, like whether you're a sculptor or Michael Jackson or a cyclist, like that coach or that teacher is going to say, here's the fundamentals, here's the base, right? But the thing that's going to make you, like the thing that makes you stand out is that, I think, that will, right? That will to want to do more, do something different, that will to not follow the herd, that will to live a genuine, unapologetic, unique life, that will to want to be just a better self, right? Because it's like you're not competing. Like Da Vinci didn't compete with anyone. He was just like, I've got this skill and this talent, and I'm going to do this entirely amazing thing because this is what I want. You know, Michael Jackson is probably Michael Jordan was probably like driven by other players to be the best, but at the end of the day, he's probably just like, look, I do these fundamentals. I'm super fit as an athlete, but like, how do I just be better than myself all the time? Same with LeBron, right? It's like, I don't think those guys are actually competing with anyone but themselves. So they've put in the fundamentals and the base, and now they're like, well, how do I just keep improving? How do I get better? And I think that's just for some people. That's that mindset or will, which, like, you start running and you're like, just put the shoes on, go out for 2 miles today, and then it's going to turn to 3 miles, and then 6 miles, and then 10 miles. But it's like, you have to want whatever this is for yourself, which is like, you have to set the goal, you have to know yourself, you have to want to be you, you know, versus like, I'm just going to do what everyone else does and I'm going to do it at 50%, and then you're just like everyone else, and you go through life the same as everyone else, and that's just kind of what it is. You know, it's like, look at most people in most careers, it's like you just sign up for whatever is safe and secure, and you're just like, whatever, go through the same motions.
Right.
But it's like, unless you want it for yourself, I don't think any of this changes. And the fundamentals are all the same. We're not recreating life, you know? But I think it's that ability to dream bigger than anyone else and just want the best out of you.
That's great. So, I mean, hopefully, you know, people who are listening, not that we're the right way, and we talked about this, Scott, maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong, whatever it is you want, you know, anyone who's listening wants to, you know, take from this, take it, make it your own, you know, maybe you have a different perspective. We encourage that. It's about the collective. In regards to, you know, that concept of what we started with, of creating from within and doing, you know, kind of putting you into it, you know. So if you knew that at a very high level, right? Let's say you're super skilled at dissecting yourself, breaking it down, polishing, making that better, and you know how to make you amazing at every moment, right? You know how to push yourself. You know what it's going to take. You're in a good place with self, right? And you're doing it moment by moment, by moment. That means everything that's around you gets that version of you rather than the one that's not as polished and not as developed and not as evolved. Because I used this example with friends before. You know, I had the luxury of knowing a bongo player here in LA that I knew him really well. He's a super cool guy, 2 kids, amazing bongo, Congo drummer, and he recorded some of the tracks with Prince. He was, you know, he went on live tours with him. And he talks about Prince, and he told me the story about when Purple Rain, he had just written Purple Rain. He had never played it before in live, and he showed up at this college, university. I want to say it was like Brown University or George Washington University. I forget. It was back in the day. Long story short, he goes out on campus, plays at this dive bar. He's out there with Sheila E. and all that, and they played Purple Rain for the first time. And he's like, I want to record this because it's the first time I want to play it, with no intention of going, that's the track that's actually on the album. That recording. the part of the track where he starts playing, na, 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 he made that up in the moment. That wasn't planned. They hadn't rehearsed it. They hadn't done it in rehearsals at all. He didn't even tell him he was going to do it. He just did it. But you're talking about a guy that is self-taught. He knows like 9 different instruments at a high level. Yep. Classical guitarist, right? And you're going, what he is expressing to us is the manifestation of how well he knows who he is and what he is.
Right.
He just does
I'm actually thinking, Jefferson, as you're saying this, all I could think about is The Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. Right? Which is, so Prince does this thing on the wing, and someone says, super talented, but all I could think about is, this guy taught himself 9 instruments because he had a passion for music and probably spent countless hours doing this thing. Yeah. So in the moment, he gives you this creativity, but this creativity is coming from hours and hours and hours of creating a skill, right? So also thinking about what you do. And it's like, you're good at what you do, but you didn't start yesterday. And even if you did, and this thing is growing, in 10 years, it's going to be better, right? Yeah. Just like Joe Rogan, he's been doing, as we started with, he's been doing this for 20 plus years, right? So this skill just gets better, but one, he made the decision of what he wants, what he's passionate about. Yeah. He invested in it. And then as you go along with it, things develop. But it's like, so Prince doing this and learning 9 instruments, it's like, I wonder what level of just like, I love this and I want to do this. And I'm just going to get better at this, and I'm going to sit here in the evening and play my guitar for like, 8-10 hours just because this is what I love and this is what I'm passionate about. And something develops out of that, right?
Yeah.
So as much as we complicate this magic, it's just more like, do you have this passion and want and will to just do something you love, right? Versus like, you'll never be happy doing what you don't love. So that's a great incentive to just stop doing whatever mediocre thing that is you're doing, because you know you don't love it and you know you're unhappy. If you sit with yourself, 100% today, right now, all the things that you shouldn't be doing and the things that you don't love, and the people around you that you don't need around you, and the people around you that you love to be around because they feel good, and when you go do this thing, that's the thing that you want to do. But it's like, why? I think the question more is like, I'm curious now about like, why is it that we keep doing these things that we know we shouldn't be doing and not the things that we love doing? Like, where is that fear of loss coming from?
The end.
Wrap it up, folks.
No, that's it. You see? That's the question. What the heck is going on? Where did you get that from that you're supposed to go do that you hate?
Right?
You hate it.
And maybe, Jefferson, this is it, right? So what we're talking about is internal growth, right? And internal growth just comes from you sitting with yourself and analyzing that you need to just flourish a little more, right? You want to bear some more fruits. And you're like, how do I get more sunshine and water? So is it that we just need more people to sit with themselves and say, what am I doing wrong? So if you cut out some of the distractions every day and I gave you 2 hours and I said, in this 2 hours, I just want you to think about what you're doing. Maybe set some goals. Or not even setting goals, right? It's like, don't go worry about paying off the credit card bills and being the best at something. Just be like, what am I doing? Who are the people am I surrounded by? What am I doing on a daily basis? And if I do this for another 10 years and at the end of the book, at the end, right, will I be happy with the story that I wrote?
Right.
And how can I get you to close the fictional book that you're reading or the non-fictional one and switch over to something that you want to read? So maybe it's drama or it's comedy or maybe it's poetry, right?
Yeah, exactly. Not exactly. So that extension, because we could talk about this forever, and please come back, man, because, as I'm sure now everybody witnesses what I said at the beginning, you're a fantastic career guy, good soul, and you're doing incredible things. I mean, there you go. There's the confirmation in the background.
Sorry about that.
That was amazing. It was like, we agree. On a physical level, on a, obviously on a personal level, I mean, you're contributing to life. People get to experience you. I mean, and they get to go like, Scott's dope. I mean, we have mutual friends, and they talk so highly of you, and I can see why, But hopefully you'll come back and we can keep talking about some cool things, and I hope people have, some good takeaways from this, that extension of who we are into things and putting us on the surface of this planet, and as Scott said, the real us, that the story we'd actually really like to write, the things we'd actually really want to do, the experiences we really want to have, by putting that into the pot, everything's going to get better for not only yourself but for the rest of us. So I know I do it for that reason. I know Scott does it, and there's plenty of people I know that do that, that go like, I'd rather contribute and participate at the best level, see where that goes. And if I can be cognitive of it and I can go into it knowing that I'm doing that, I can sleep at night at peace knowing that, things are always getting better. So
right.
Thank you, Scott Savory. Everybody,
Jefferson,
give a big warm up. Yeah.
Thanks for having me on. Keep doing what you're doing. I think, like a book, maybe someone takes one or two lines from this and it makes a difference. Some of the stuff you guys talked about in the last one made a difference for me, and I resonated with. So, dude, just keep helping, because that's the best thing that we can do in this life, right? Which is give our services to the better cause of the people closest to us. So, thank you.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you for that, and appreciate everyone joining. Like, comment, share. If you want to be on the show, reach out. Tell me how interesting you are. I'm always looking to learn about people. So thank you, everyone. Deep Walkers, Jefferson Keith Langley.
Thanks, Jefferson. Bye.